Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Completionist. I'm back for another winter season, guys, and massive apologies for it taking this long, for me to get a video out, but I really wanted to, take the time to really enjoy this winter break because the final bit of work, for the last few weeks before I came home just before Christmas was incredibly brutal. So, I really wanted to take this time to kind of relax and, really enjoy myself and, do the things that, that good husbands do, in order to keep the wifey happy and all that kind of stuff. So I'm about 2 months into my holiday with about 5 to 6 weeks left. So I thought I got as much relaxation in as I can, so I thought this would be a perfect time now to get some videos made for my YouTube channel. So for the first video for 2023 that I wanted to make for myself is I wanted to talk about my personal impressions on my most anticipated game of 2022, which is Valkyrie Elysium. And I really wanted to make a video, to talk about this game because I am a hardcore fan of the Valkyrie Profile series. So when this game originally got announced, I was incredibly excited because we haven't really had a main game in the Valkyrie Profile series since Valkyrie Profile Covenant of the Plume, which was released for the DS. I know Valkyrie Profile had a mobile game, but I don't really count that. So it was actually quite a shock to actually see a trailer for a brand new Valkyrie game, and I was incredibly excited about it. And even more so because this Christmas, I ended up getting a PlayStation 5 for Christmas, so I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to actually get the best upgrade of the game because it did get released for both the PS4 and the PS5. So one of the 4 PS5 games that I actually got for Christmas between my wife and I was Valkyrie Elysium. So I thought, this would be a good opportunity to play it and to give it a good honest try. And I've already, seen a few reviews on it and a few people provide their personal impressions on it. And some people had some positive things to say, some people had some negative things to say, but it never really deterred me from my overall thoughts on the game. And for the most part, me playing Valkyrie Elysium, even though it is a huge departure of what the Valkyrie Profile series is all about, I came out of this game somewhat satisfied for the most part. In essence, it really isn't a Valkyrie Profile game because they completely changed the gameplay of it. It's not really an RPG per se. It's more of a third-person action beat 'em up platformer in that sense. But despite the huge departure in gameplay, I actually enjoyed it for the most part, but it's not within its fair share of problems. So let's focus on what I did enjoy about Valkyrie Elysium. The way that I look at Valkyrie Elysium is that you can tell it's a budget title, especially, by Square Enix standards. You can tell that the budget for this game wasn't necessarily the biggest, because, and I can understand Square Enix's kind of point of view. If you're making a brand new game, not necessarily a brand new game, but if you're making a game from an old IP, is it still going to have that power to attract new fans to the series? Because old fans that have a fondness for Valkyrie Profile are obviously going to give this game a try. But can this game attract new fans? That's the key thing. To be honest, despite the sharp change in gameplay, I actually got my enjoyment out of the game. and for the most part, guys, like I actually do have this game completed, like the core game at least. I have the platinum trophy for the actual core game, and there is an expansion for this, an expansion add-on that adds 3 additional trophies to it, and I got 1 out of the 3. The other 2 trophies I'm currently working on the expansion pack is to beat the Seraphic Gate and to beat the game on Valkyrie mode, which is the hardest gameplay mode on this game. The biggest thing I really enjoyed about this game is I really enjoyed the battle system. The battle system actually had a lot of polish to it, but I wouldn't necessarily call it, you know, the best battle system of that type. You can definitely see the budgetary constraints in it. You know, it doesn't have as nice of a free-flowing movement as compared to like the battle mechanics of like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, but it's got a lot of depth to it, and despite the fact that you're playing this game over 9 chapters, I think, and you're just fighting wave after wave after wave of enemy, it never feels tiresome. Because Valkyrie in the game, she can use 6 different types of weapons, from 3 different types of 3 different types of swords, 2 different sets of spears, and you get some kind of like mace or hammer that she actually uses in the game. And as you get through the game, you know, you get access to more and more of these weapons, and you know, they'll eventually level up, and you know, you can perform more moves with them, and you can and in battle you can consistently switch between 1 or 2 weapons, but then after each battle you can actually go into the menu and, you know, switch things up, because every enemy actually has a weapon weakness, and every boss has a weapon weakness, and every enemy actually has an elemental weakness as well. And that's one of the most appealing things of the game, is that they actually made it really easy to figure out, you know, what weapon works well with what enemy, or what elemental spell does the most damage to each enemy, because each enemy has a health bar just over them, and it'll show what its elemental weakness is. And also, not only that, guys, like the thing is that if you're attacking an enemy with the right weapon, it'll actually say on the screen, you know, weapon weakness. So, you know, like the right weapon to use for right enemy, for the right enemy. And I actually appreciate, you know, the kind of detail into that. You know, some of the other things, you know, I do like about the game. I do like how the game is structured, like how the game is structured into different chapters, but the problem with some of the chapters is that some of the chapters are very unevenly paced. And it's and what I mean by that is that, you know, there's one chapter that you could be on for 2 or 3 hours, and then there's another chapter that literally will only take like 45 minutes or like an hour to beat, because some of the chapters focus on recruiting a certain Einherjar, other chapters focus on, you know, grabbing, you know, one of the 4 sacred treasures, you know, for Odin. And there are some chapters that contribute to actually trying to tell the story that this game is trying to present. And with regards to the overall story, guys, like, it's fine. You know, it doesn't hold the same staying power as what you would expect out of Valkyrie Profile 1 or Valkyrie Profile 2, because you can see the budgetary constraints in this game. Because obviously there's very few non-playable characters in it. There's very few NPCs. You know, all the worlds are completely devoid of life or things along those lines. You know, you barely see any public bystanders. You know, every area that you go to, every town that you go to is just devoid of life. And you know, sometimes you come across these spirits that set up side quests for you that you can actually entertain, you know, to get power-ups, you know, with regards to getting health increases, or how often you can cast spells, or how often you can summon your Einherjar. And unfortunately, you know, the game does suffer from a lot of pointless side quest padding to kind of draw the game out a little more. It doesn't really add anything to it, but in all honesty, in the higher difficulties and the more difficult levels, you almost have no other choice than to actually do these side quests, especially if you want to get the necessary health power-ups, you know, to actually survive in battle and things along those lines. But for me as a video game completionist, I don't really see that as much of a fault. You know, any excuse that can increase my playtime with a specific game, I'm not really going to complain about, because a lot of the completionist requirements are pretty straightforward. You know, everything is pretty much laid out for you. Like, it is absolutely impossible to miss anything in this game. It's not like if you miss it's not as if you miss a certain thing, or if you miss a treasure chest, you know, you can't go back to the area again. You can. You can go back and replay any of the chapters at any times. You know, you have to collect the spirit blossoms, or these verdant blossoms that give you a little bit of background into how the general populace died during Ragnarok. And the verdant blossoms are actually necessary in order to get the best ending in the game that it has, because the game actually has 4 endings, but you get access to all 4 endings in the final chapter, all depending on what you did in the other previous chapters. And that's a hell of a lot more convenient, you know, compared to Valkyrie Profile 1, which, you know, you had to abide by a certain amount of steps, and you had to do things in the right order. You couldn't show up at specific places, and you were under a specified time limit. So with regards to getting the multiple endings in the game, it's not really that difficult. You can get everything in literally chapter 9, and it's all fairly straightforward. So I do like the easy setup that the game has, and the completionist requirements aren't really that difficult. Personally, for me, you know, some of the most probably some of the most difficult completionist requirements, there were some of them that actually required a heavy amount of grinding, especially if you wanted to get max grade on each of your weapons, because when you get your weapons, I think you start off at grade F or grade G, and you basically have to keep using that weapon when you fight certain enemies, and eventually you can bring the weapon up to grade SSS. But it takes a lot of battling. It takes a lot of battling enemy waves, going through different chapters. I probably went through chapter 8 maybe about 20 or 25 times, you know, to make sure that I had all my weapons up to the max grade in order to get that trophy. Just hang on, guys, need my water. But that was probably the most time-consuming trophy. I think for me, playing the game on normal difficulty, which is where I did the majority of the completionist requirements, I think I put about 60 hours into my playthrough. And then when I had to get the trophy for beating the game on hard mode, I think my playthrough was only about 18 to 20 hours, because I knew exactly where everything was and what I had to do, and you know, how to beat specific bosses and things along those lines. I used the knowledge on the normal playthrough, you know, to actually excel through the hard mode playthrough. But when it comes to the expansion mode, I do have to play the game on Valkyrie mode, which everyone says is the most difficult mode to play the game on. So eventually, when I get back to it, I'll see how truly difficult that is. Another thing that I did like about the game, guys, is I really liked how they did the Einherjar in this game, because you can summon 2 Einherjar at once, but you have access to all 4 after after you finish chapter 6, I think. Yeah, chapter 6. And basically you can summon 2 at once. Every Einherjar has an elemental attribute to it. You know, Egon is lightning, Cypher is ice, Christopher is holy, and Taika is fire. And basically they come out for a short amount of time. You know, they do their spells and their weapon attacks, you know, all depending on what you need them for. But you can't summon them all the time, because they do have a fatigue bar attached to it. So when you beat enemies, you know, you can collect souls, you can collect gems to actually refill that bar, or you actually can get items to keep refilling that bar, so you know you can actually reuse them. But one of the things I did like about the Einherjar in this one, compared to Valkyrie Profile 2, is that as you complete more of the Einherjar side quests, you actually get a lot more background into their story and how they died. Now, they don't do it as well as they do it in Valkyrie Profile 1, where you'll actually see the story and you see the interactions. Like, they'll actually do it in kind of like a radio drama kind of feel. Like, each Einherjar has 6 parts to their story, and you can actually listen to how they interact with people in their life, and you see the build-up of how things started in their life and to ultimately, you know, what leads to their death. And that's actually done a lot better in Valkyrie Profile 2, because in Valkyrie Profile 2, when you recruit an Einherjar, you actually got to go into the menu and you got to go into the character, and it's just like a short little excerpt, and that's it. And I will admit, guys, like, I actually do like the voice acting in the game. I thought all the voices for all the characters came across reasonably well, but the key thing is that if you haven't already played this game, if you're expecting to see any callbacks to any of the original Valkyrie Profile games or any of the original aspects of the other Valkyrie Profile games, you're going to be sorely disappointed. There really isn't, from my personal knowledge, now I don't really consider myself a Valkyrie Profile expert, but there's really nothing in this game connecting to the other Valkyrie Profile games. It's almost like a different iteration. It's a different retelling of a Valkyrie storyline. You know, it could be, you know, in a different alternative universe or anything along those lines. You know, there was kind of a part of me that, you know, I was kind of hoping in some kind of post-game dungeon kind of thing, you know, we'd have a boss fight against Lenneth or Freya or anything along those lines. You know, basically, it is Valkyrie Profile, but it is Valkyrie Profile in name only. You know, you do get a lot of references, you know, to Norse mythology. You know, you have Odin, you have Fenrir, you have a Valkyrie, but in this game, you know, like there's no Freya, there's no Lizard. I don't even think that any of the voice actors from the original Valkyrie Profile games even made any kind of appearance or did any voice work in this new title. But that's not to any detriment, you know, to the people that did work on this game. You know, like the way that I see this game, guys, is that I see this game as a way, as a test market, to see if there is enough interest for Square Enix to actually put in enough money to actually make the Valkyrie Profile 3 that, you know, that we've always wanted. You know, we've had Lenneth's storyline, we've had Silmaria's storyline, so all we have is Hrist's storyline. And my personal hope is that, did the sales of Valkyrie Elysium satisfy Square Enix enough that they can actually say, you know what, there's interest in the Valkyrie Profile mythology. So Tri-Ace is all finished now, Star Ocean 6, because I know that's the game that gaming company was working on, And the extra time that Square Enix gave them to make it actually paid off, because according to what a lot of people have told me, you know, Star Ocean 6 is a definite improvement over Star Ocean 4 and Star Ocean 5. People think it's one of the one of the better Star Ocean games out there. So my personal feelings is that I'm hoping that Square Enix, if they're happy with the sales with Valkyrie Elysium, that they'll give the series back to Tri-Ace, and they'll give them the budget, and they'll give them the time, so that we can actually get the Valkyrie profile game that we've always wanted. But when it comes to video games and the video game world, you never really know what's going to happen, and you never really know what this company is going to do for the betterment of themselves and for the betterment of the gaming audience that they're trying to please. You know, all you can really do is hope. Now, despite my enjoyment of the game, guys, like, I do have, you know, a few problems with it, besides the ones that I've already mentioned. You know, I think the biggest one is, obviously, since this game is done by a new gaming company, you can definitely tell, you know, it's more of a budget title. Even though Matoya did do the soundtrack for this game, the soundtrack isn't the best. This isn't his best work. No disrespect to him. We all know he's a god among the video game composers, especially for his work in Valkyrie Profile and Star Ocean and many of the other game series that he's actually worked on. The soundtrack isn't the best. The game can be very hack and slashy. There isn't really much depth to it. There isn't really a lot of diversification when it comes to enemies. You know, you're fighting the same enemies all the time. They're just different elements for the most part. I think there's maybe about a dozen to 15 different enemy types, and the bosses are huge, but they're kind of uneventful, you know, at the same time as well. You can see in it, you know, where cuts had to be made in order for this game to be the best that it could be, while still retaining, its budget. You know, the worlds are very lifeless. You know, they look nice, but there's not really much to them. You know, it suffers from, you know, Final Fantasy XIII syndrome, that, like, even though the maps of each of these towns and cities and landscapes that you go through, it looks very big and vast, you know, but in hindsight, you're just going from one corridor to another, and just like one long corridor, it just loops around and around and around, and but eventually it's going to lead you all to the same location. So it's literally impossible, you know, to get lost in the game. And I think one of the biggest problems, guys, is ultimately the story. Like, nothing in the story in Valkyrie Elysium is really going to surprise you, because you're going to see it coming. You're going to know what the plot twist is. And this is the section we're going to talk about spoilers, guys, but, you know, since this game's already been released for a few months, I'm sure, you know, the majority of you have already played it to begin with. But even though, you know, you're a servant to Odin, Odin always has an ulterior motive. That's always the case in every Valkyrie Profile game. And, you know, and at the end, he's really the true final boss of the game, which, go figure. And we all know that, you know, we all know going into this that the Valkyrie isn't a Valkyrie. You know, she was a human girl, you know, recruited by Odin. That's going to come as no surprise. So, you know, don't go into this game expecting to be wowed by the storyline, because if you played a Valkyrie Profile game before, all of this is going to come off as relatively generic. And I think if you're trying to attract new fans to the series, this isn't really the way to do it, because you're pretty much kind of sort of making the same story that, you know, that we've all seen before, and you're just adding a bunch of new characters to it. But the funny thing I will give this game is as I said before, guys, like, the game actually has 4 endings. Just, you have the best ending, you have a good ending, you have a bad ending, and then you have a kind of so-so ending. I don't really want to go into the detail of each of the endings, but no matter what ending you get, in a way, it seems sort of satisfying, in a sense that if the game had only went with just one of these 4 endings and you didn't have an opportunity to get any of the rest, you'd come out of it feeling sort of satisfied, and maybe, oh, okay, that's how it goes. Okay, so that's the story that you want to tell. Because like even the bad ending and even the second best ending, I came out of it, you know, kind of feeling feeling satisfied. You know, there's an ending, without really spoiling too much, there's an ending where you defeat Odin, but you actually allow Fenrir to live, who is the like the lord of the underworld, or Niflheim, or you know what. And in a way, I kind of like that ending just as well as the actual best ending in the game. And that's so funny because like each ending sort of had a satisfactory factor to it, and that's really strange, especially when a game deals with multiple endings, because some of them come across, you know, incredibly lackluster, and some of them come across relatively epic. But no matter what ending that I actually got in the game, it actually felt somewhat satisfying. So that is pretty much, you know, all I have to say about Valkyrie Elysium. You know, it's not a perfect game. You know, it's kind of a step back towards what the Valkyrie Profile series means to me. But personally, I got my enjoyment out of it, and I actually reversed the cover. I actually prefer this cover art to the front cover art. But I came out of this game somewhat satisfied, and ultimately, I wasn't truly disappointed by this, because I knew this was going to be different from the actual original Valkyrie Profile game and what the Valkyrie Profile series represents. You know, it's fine as an accompanying game to the mythos of Valkyrie Profile, but I really want the sales for this game to do well enough that Square Enix will look at this title and give the series back the Tri-Ace, so that we can actually get the Valkyrie Profile 3 that we really truly deserve. Because one of my ultimate biggest problems with Valkyrie Profile 2, and I love that game, I think it's one of the best JRPGs for the PlayStation 2, is the ending in that game felt so unfulfilling. It was very lackluster, especially since Valkyrie Profile 2 has my favorite JRPG villain of all time, you know, which is Lizard Valve, voiced superbly by Liam O'Brien. And it's just like, by the time that game told its final story, and you know, for as good as it was and for as satisfying as it was, it just left me feeling empty. And it's just like, I'm just saying, you can't tease me like that. Where's our Valkyrie Profile 3? So let's personally hope that the sales for this game do well enough that Square Enix puts more money into the next Valkyrie title. But this, as far as I'm concerned, is a respectable attempt. I understand the game's limitations, and I understand the budgetary restrictions, but I think for what this video game developer had when it came to doing this game, I thought they did the best that they could with what they had. It's a little shallow in some places, but the biggest thing that this game did get right is the battle system. The battle system is really enjoyable. It is a lot of fun. And now that I remember, guys, one really little gripe that I had with this is that you don't get Nibelung Valesti, the Valkyrie's main super attack, until really late in the game. And that's such a crying shame, because, you know, you get it pretty much very, you know, in the very first dungeon of Valkyrie Profile 1, and you get it pretty early in Valkyrie Profile 2, but at the end of the day, it's a respectable attempt, and I certainly got my enjoyment out of it. It's not going to blow your mind. It's not going to make you think it's the best, you know, 3D hack and slash action platformer out there, but it's still a respectable attempt, and any game in the Valkyrie series is a game that I'm going to support wholeheartedly. So anyway guys, I hope you enjoy my impressions of Valkyrie Elysium. Anyway guys, it's good to be back. I'm going to try to come up with a couple of more video ideas, you know, before I have to head back to work again. But anyway, it's great to see you all. I hope you're doing well, and I hope each and every one of you kick butt as always. So, as I always say guys, take care, and I wish you nothing but the best.